Hi guys, welcome to the second episode of my YouTube where we are going to be talking about books for plague times. Today I am talking about a veritable classic. This is Boccaccio's The Decameron. Here in the United States, the coronavirus kind of issues are getting much more dire than they were even a few days ago. We here in Colorado, we've had our first death. We know that they're not testing as much as they should be. There's a general sense of panic in the air. Everyone's buying the toilet paper.
They open the door.
Alright. It's just been a little bit crazy. So there's coronavirus crazies, no toilet paper on the shelves. Many of us who are socially responsible are practicing some level of social distancing, if not self-quarantine. If you have a cough, self-quarantine. If you don't, just stay away from other people for a while. This is easier for those of us who are introverts with large libraries, but everyone should be doing it. And a great book to read while you are practicing social distancing and self-quarantining and stuck at home and you want to escape the chaos of your children or the irritating habits of your spouse is Boccaccio's The Decameron. So let's talk about it. It was published in 1353. They think he composed it between 1349 and 1353, and that is right when the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death, was busy ravaging Europe.
It's the plague, gonna kill you in a few days. A pandemic so severe, Black Death caused such horror and fear. And there ain't no cure for that, girl. You'll be dead in no time flat, girl.
So the bubonic plague was really everywhere for 5 years, which is a very long time if you think about the level of panic that we as Americans are currently experiencing in terms of the coronavirus. It's an extra long time when you think about medical science in the day, which had no clue about microbes or germs or how these things spread. Everyone thought it was witches or sinners. The Black Death is actually this personification of the experience of this plague, right? Like, here is just this random thing that happens to you, this black figure that comes swooping in with a sickle, just chopping off the heads and souls of people that you love. And rather than tell you about the symptoms and everything, I'm going to read some sections for you from the Decameron just to really illustrate how dire it was. But before I do that, I just want to give you some numbers because this was like an absolutely huge event for humanity historically. They say that between 25 and 30 million people in Europe died, and that was 30 to 50% of the population. So imagine everyone you know, and imagine that only half of them are around in 5 years. It was an absolutely decimating kind of event. I can't overstate how devastating it was. Here is how Boccaccio describes the symptoms of the bubonic plague. He writes, he's talking about, here it is, it's arrived in Europe. It did not assume the form it had in the East, where bleeding from the nose was a manifest sign of inevitable death, but rather it showed its first signs in men and women alike by means of swellings either in the groin or under the armpits, some of which grew to the size of an ordinary apple and others to the size of an egg, more or less, and the people called them gavaccioli. And from the two parts of the body already mentioned, in very little time, the said deadly gavaccioli began to spread indiscriminately over every part of the body. Then, after this, the symptoms of the illness changed to black or livid spots appearing on the arms and thighs and on every part of the body. Sometimes there were large ones, and other times a number of little ones scattered all around. So I do need to mention that I am using the Musa and Bondinella translation of the Decameron, and I am not sure if that's like a great one. It's a Signet Classic translation, but I am not an Italian Renaissance scholar, so I grabbed the cheapest version of the Decameron I could find because I couldn't find my old copy that I once got at a thrift store. So I'm going to stop and say, so he's explaining exactly why it's called the Black Death, right? Like you get these like horrible growths, and in the Middle Ages, because they don't have this medical technology, it's really just roll of the dice. And he's describing the signs that they looked for that you knew someone was going to die. He goes on. He writes, neither a doctor's advice nor the strength of medicine could do anything to cure this illness. On the contrary, either the nature of the illness was such that it afforded no cure, or else the doctors were so ignorant that they did not recognize its cause and, as a result, could not prescribe the proper remedy. In fact, the number of doctors, other than the well-trained, was increased by a large number of men and women who had never had any medical training. At any rate, few of the sick were ever cured, and almost all died after the third day of the appearance of the previously described symptoms. And most of them died without fever or any other side effects. I don't know if you guys heard about that televangelist that got in a ton of trouble for selling a cure to the coronavirus to his very faithful patrons. But Boccaccio describes there's a ton of people who don't know what they're doing, who are pretending that they know what they're doing because everybody wants to make money off this, and how there is nothing that anybody can do. And I think that's how we all feel a little bit right now about the coronavirus is what do you do, right? Especially when you start thinking about the effect it's going to have on the medical technology we do have, right? Like overwhelming the hospitals, not enough respirators, kind of in Italy, they're already being forced to choose who lives, who dies. It's a very scary thing. But one thing I found strangely comforting about this section of the Decameron, which is Boccaccio's introduction to the book, is that you can see a lot of parallels, right? Like you can see a lot of consistency in human behavior in these crisis moments, which I found comforting. So Boccaccio talks about how this pestilence was so powerful it was transmitted to the healthy by contact with the sick, the way a fire close to dry or oily things will set them aflame. Again, I am reminded of this current virus, super contagious. But one of the most disturbing kind of descriptions of how this virus is spread in medieval Italy, which is where Boccaccio is writing about, is here, right? So he writes, one day, when the rags of a poor man who died of this disease were thrown into the public street, 2 pigs came upon them, and, as they are wont to do, first with their snouts and then with their teeth, they took the rags and shook them around, and within a short time, after a number of convulsions, both pigs fell dead upon the ill-fated rags as if they had been poisoned. From these and many similar or worse occurrences, there came about such fear and such fantastic notions among those who remained alive that almost all of them took a very cruel attitude in the matter. That is, they completely avoided the sick and their possessions, and in so doing, each one believed that he was protecting his own good health. Humans don't change, you guys. But also, what a scene, right? Like these 2 pigs fighting over rags, and all of a sudden they're dying because the rags have bubonic plague on them. That is terrifying. That's a very, very scary thing to witness. I don't doubt that medieval Italians were like, F this. I don't want to touch it. I'm not interested. No.